Coming up, an education and environmental activist tells us about the speech she delivered at the UN. We're catching up with hip-hop artist Mike Jordan, and we've got you covered on everything happening at the 2023 Res Conference in Las Vegas this week. We hear from the National Center. I'm Aaliyah Chavez. Join us for those interviews, plus headlines from the ICT Newscast.
This program is made possible by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, a private corporation funded by the American people.
Arizona State University welcomes 3,500 Indigenous students from Arizona and across the nation. It serves one of the largest populations of Indigenous students among U.S. colleges and universities. We created a sense of place for tribal nations to create futures of their own making through community outreach and research, taught by world-class Indigenous faculty where they see a reflection of themselves and their experiences. Find community at ASU.
Omerawa Hopa. Thank you for joining us. We start today in Hanover, New Hampshire, where Native American skeletal remains have been found at an Ivy League college. Dartmouth College announced last week the discovery of 15 Native American ancestors in their collections. Around 100 other uncatalogued bones were also discovered during an internal collections review. The college acknowledged some of the bones were used in teaching labs as recently as fall of 2022. Dartmouth President Philip Hanlon said he sincerely apologizes, adding, "Dartmouth is dedicated to righting these heartbreaking wrongs." The remains have been transported to a secure storage facility off campus, according to the Hood Museum. Dartmouth faculty say they are scheduling a cleansing ceremony and other appropriate actions while the school, quote, actively pursues compliance with the Native American Graves Protection and Repatriation Act. It is not immediately clear where the bones were found or where they will be returned to. In North Dakota, a bill to secure protections for Native children placed in foster care or adoptive homes is moving closer toward becoming law.
Tally reveals 46 ayes, 0 nay. House Bill 1536 is passed.
The state Senate passed the bill last week after previously clearing the state House in February. Now, HB 1536 will head back to the state House to resolve differences. This proposal comes as the U.S. Supreme Court mulls the federal Indian Child Welfare Act that sets standards for giving preference to extended family or tribal members. North Dakota bill backers say they are pleased to possibly codify the protections in the state.
You know, I'm an emotional person when it comes to things that are very personal. And nothing is more personal than our children, our Indigenous children. So, you know, the more people that are getting educated, the more it's been talked about in both chambers, the more people that understand, just need to codify it. So yeah, definitely a good day.
If legislators resolve their differences, the governor is expected to sign the bill into law. Now to Canada, where two First Nations sisters are celebrating after being released from prison on bail last week. Both served 30 years for a second-degree murder conviction in 1994 and have maintained they did not kill the victim. APTN's Brent McGillivray reports.
The long road to justice for Adelia and Narissa Cuisance cleared another hurdle in a Yorkton courtroom. King's Bench Justice Donald Lay released the sisters on bail pending the results of their ministerial review.
I feel I'm relieved. We're home free, and I just want to thank the judge. And that's all I have to say right now. Thank you, and my family being here and all our support. It's a relief. I'm shocked. But
the two sisters from the nearby Kisakus Salto First Nation were convicted of murder in the killing of farmer Anthony Dolph in 1994. A cousin of theirs confessed to the crime and served a prison sentence. The Cuisance sisters have always maintained their innocence. James Lockyer of Innocence Canada, a lobby group for the wrongfully convicted, is representing the sisters.
This is a big step en route to the minister's eventual decision, because the purpose of this is to get their convictions quashed so that their names are cleared.
Justice Lay said he was satisfied that there's a public interest in granting bail to Narissa and Odelia, and that they will surrender to authorities when the Justice Minister decides on a new trial or appeal. The decision is effective immediately.
It's obviously very emotional. Odelia can go back to living full-time, all the time, with her two twin daughters and her husband. And Narissa is going to be out of an institution and out of an institutional environment into a lovely home in Saskatoon with two lovely people.
It's now up to the federal Justice Minister to decide if, when, and where a new trial for the sisters will go ahead. Brent McGillivray, APTN National News, Yorkton, Saskatchewan.
History was made at the Maine State House recently in the quest for sovereignty. Chiefs from all 5 Wabanaki tribes gave a State of the Tribes address to a crowded legislative chamber. The tribes hope to alter the Maine Indian Land Claims Settlement Act of 1980, which treats reservations like municipalities that are subject to state law. The first and only other State of the Tribes address took place in 2002 and did not include a representative from all of the tribes. State and tribal leaders have long sparred over the issue of sovereignty for Native communities. A proposal to grant tribal sovereignty was tabled by the Maine legislature last year when Governor Janet Mills threatened to veto it. Mills was not present at the historic address due to an unspecified scheduling conflict.
All we want is for state government to break decisively from the past and join the era of self-determination for tribal nations that has proven so successful throughout the rest of the country. We are capable of self-governance and should be treated as partners rather than threats to the future of this state. We want a relationship with state government that is based on mutual trust, fidelity, and respect.
They also addressed the issues of tribal healthcare services, education, and business growth. State leaders referenced the event as part of an ongoing legislative work to strengthen the relationship between Maine and its tribal neighbors. And those are the headlines for the ICT Newscast. In late March, Charitie Ropati delivered a speech at the United Nations on International Day of Forests. She wears a few hats, including being an Arctic Youth Ambassador and an Arctic Resilient Communities Youth Fellow at Columbia University. Her research covers the intersections of permafrost, plant ecology, and social and cultural resilience in coastal Native communities. Charitie joins us now virtually with more. Charitie, let's jump right in here. Give us the high points of what your speech was about.
So it was for International Day of the Forests, and I'm from Anchorage, Alaska. I was born and raised there. I really wanted to highlight the work of really amazing, phenomenal organizations like the Southeast Sustainable Partnership, and my dear person, who is from the village of Pusan, who knows how to traditionally live off the land. So I really wanted to talk about her work, but also talk about the importance of Indigenous knowledge within my own research. I remember going to the long-term ecological research all scientists meeting. I was one of very few Native people. I was one of the only Native youth there. And I remember presenting my research on fireweed photosynthesis. And 3 days before, I found out that Typhoon Merbok, as we all know, was one of the largest storms hit our communities. And I was left with a heavy heart while presenting this research, and knew that things needed to be different. It needed to be more diverse, and that Western science needs to take Native knowledge a lot more seriously. And so I talked about that during my speech at the UN.
As you just mentioned in your speech, you really spoke on ancestral knowledge and playing into climate change. Maybe talk about what that experience was like for you, given that those are all very personal subject matters.
Yeah, so with my idea, I firmly believe that you don't need a degree from institutions, that were meant to serve as settler colonial entities. Like when you think about institutions like Columbia and like Dartmouth, I'm thankful to be here. But when it comes to those back home, there are things that we can do that no one else can, like living off the tundra, being able to live in those conditions. We know when salmon will come in the Yukon River, we know when our trees aren't healthy. And these are things that, scientists should understand, that these are things we're able to do. So I was talking about that, and it's kind of like a love letter to Indigenous knowledge. It needs to be uplifted. And I'm really thankful to people like Dr. Jessica Hernandez, who's Indigenous to the South, who really writes about these type of things in Fresh Banana Leaves, and Dr. Robin Wall-Kimmer. These are people that need to be uplifted, especially these Native femmes who do work in STEM. And I don't know, I don't think we would be facing a climate crisis if Indigenous knowledge was centered and if Native people had sovereignty to begin with.
Tell us at a high level what exactly you're researching. I think sometimes academia gets a little, wordy and hard to understand, but in a simple way, what are you researching exactly?
Yeah, so we're pretty much looking at why fireweed is growing in the first place. What we're seeing in Alaska is that it's popping up a lot more. And for Native people, we use fireweed to heal, whether it's with wounds or if we're sick, we drink it as a tea. But with my research, we're seeing that fireweed is growing a lot more. And what we found was that this growth of fireweed is an indicator of where severe soil disturbance is happening. So we're seeing increased nitrogen, pretty much increased fertilization in the soil. So our question is like, where is this coming from? And so my research is just with that, and kind of incorporating what Native people have always known. When fireweed grows, it's an indicator that change is coming. And so finding ways where we could use, data from, the Western standpoint to validate what Native people have always known, so that people know that, like, if we have turned to this ancestral knowledge passed down from our elders, we would have so many answers to these questions.
What's something that you wish other people knew about climate change and really took to heart?
Yeah, I think it's important to especially turn towards the youth, to Black and Native kids. I often hear people talking about how we hold the solutions, but they never hold space for us to really talk about these things. And so my hope is that they continue to turn to us, but we also deserve to, be kids, to be joyous, to be joyful. And so understanding that when most people turn to us, there is a burden. And so I really want Native kids who are doing this type of work to know that. So rest is really important, rest is revolutionary. And I also want people to continue to hold space for us, to talk about these things, but to also think about ways where they could safeguard our dreams so that we could do anything we want to do, whether it's to become a scientist or for my younger brother to become a professional skateboarder.
Environmental researcher Charitie Ropati, thank you so much.
Thank you.
The Reservation Economic Summit, also known as RES, is underway this week in Las Vegas, Nevada. Caesar's Palace is the hub for all of the action. ICT's Paris Wise asked the National Center about its annual and biggest event.
Hi Yvette, thank you so much for joining us. We're so excited to be here kicking off RES with you. Can you give our viewers some context around RES and what it is?
Oh my gosh, so this is going to be the largest economic summit in Indian country, 2023. RES is the Reservation Economic Summit, and it assists Native American entrepreneurs, tribal enterprises, and other minorities, and really everybody to engage with each other, network. There's a lot of breakout sessions, trade show, the artisan market, and so much more at RES.
Last year, businesses were recovering from COVID. That was a big theme. Can you tell us about some themes that are going to be here this year?
Empowering for generations is our topic and our theme, our biggest theme. And there's just so much activity that goes on besides all the networking and the breakout sessions. We have the 40 Under 40 award ceremony. First time we have the Indigenous to Indigenous business matchmaking, besides the secondary matchmaking for everyone. But this is our first time with the Indigenous to Indigenous and including the Canadian delegates.
How many attendees are you expecting and how far do people travel from?
People are traveling all over from the United States, Canada, New Zealand. It's gone international. We're expected to have 4,000 plus people here at RES.
Can you tell us a little bit about your role with the National Center?
So I work for the National Center. I'm a program director and I assist various programs, the Native Edge Institutes, our one-day trainings. And here at RES, I'm the RES TV host, co-hosting with Daryl Redleaf Fielder and Mary Kim Titla, who is the executive director of Unity.
In program directing, how are events and topics and panels chosen for you guys to focus on this year?
Literally right after RES, we take a few days of a break and then we're right back into RES planning for the next year. And so it's an accumulation of all of our work year round that we come together for RES, because during the year, like I mentioned, we're doing our Native Edge Institutes, we're doing one-on-one technical assistance and training and business matchmakings all over the country in various cities and states.
What other initiatives are at the forefront for the National Center that we can look out for?
Intertribal commerce, and so we're really big at the initiative for Native entrepreneurs to start really marketing to, one, their communities, and then two, to all the other Native American communities. And so we just really want to bring everybody together, because small business owners, it's one, when they're really starting out, it's hard for them to get those first contracts. So share the love at home first, and then expand yourself to other Native communities. And likewise, we hope those Native communities have their processes in place so that they are looking for those Native-owned businesses so that we can support one another, not only in the United States, but we want to go global with this. And so our friends just north of us in Canada, we also want to include them and have our Native entrepreneurs get involved in exporting in international commerce to the Native communities in Canada. So we really want to build those relationships, because one way or another we are all related. We're at 6 degrees of separation, and no matter where you are, you can always find a friend or relative in Indian country. And so we really want our Native entrepreneurs to be able to tap into that to all the tribal communities, not only in the United States, but indigenous worldwide, really.
I'd love to hear in your own words why RES is so important.
RES is so important because it's the premier time to network, get to know each other, engage in business opportunities, learn and grow from one another, and that is really how people really can get their business going, is by learning from a mentor and finding out how they did something, even if they're not in the same industry. Just because if you're a general contractor, let's say you do heavy equipment, you can still learn from somebody who's done their marketing in another business like a coffee shop, you know, and how they get the word out. And so it's really important for everybody to share that information with one another, and that's what RES really does.
Can you tell us how programming has changed at RES over the years?
For RES over the years, I know we did a lot of focus on, of course, the startup businesses and government contracting. I think last year we started the fashion show, and that has really taken off for industries to get involved in Hollywood, in TV shows, Reservation Dogs, and all of those. We also have Tantu Cardinal joining us. She's a Canadian actress. She is sort of the Meryl Streep of Canada, and so she's going to be here at RES as well. And so RES has taken on, there's so many different ways that small business owners can get involved. So we have A to Z. So you have large prime contractors down to the small mom and pop, down to the industry of Hollywood, hair and makeup industry. I mean, it's just very large areas to cover for those conversations for all small businesses.
Well, Eva Fielder, thank you so much for joining us. We really look forward to all of the events you have planned this week.
ICT News will be on location in Las Vegas all week. Stay tuned for continuing coverage at RES 2023. The Ojibwe rapper Mike Jordan was named North Dakota's Hip Hop Artist of the Year in 2016. For years, he has created a series of hits and also leads hip hop writing workshops. I recently caught up with him just hours before he took the stage for a show at Cahokia in downtown Phoenix, Arizona. Mike Jordan, it's wonderful to sit down with you. Tell us about the projects that you've been working on.
Yeah, no, Miigwech, thanks so much for having us. It's been a while since I got to sit down with Indian Country today. As far as the projects that I'm working on right now, I had an album that I'm sitting on, and you know, trying to find time to put that out, but also not trying to rush that because you know, I'm busy. I have a family that I take care of. I have 2 beautiful girls, and so my project and inspiration has been just slowly moving towards that. I'm working on a full-length, my second full-length album called Breathe, and there's a lot of just very strong tracks on that album that, you know, tell our stories as Indigenous people, but also there's a lot of healing through it, and that's what my current works are, and I hope to finish here soon.
A lot of people know and recognize your work on Dear Native Youth. That was some years ago, but maybe talk about, you know, if a lot of the lyrics and the sentiments in that still hold true today.
Oh my gosh, there's not a day that, you know, that goes by that I don't get a message from our youth. I made that song as a moment to speak to the youth and kind of speak to my younger self. And I didn't know it would do what it did. It was like an open letter to our Native youth, like letting them understand that I know what you're going through, because I've been through it, and just taking a moment to shine the light on them. And it's one of my most powerful songs that I've put out today. And it still gets so much love and appreciation, and I'll be performing that during my set at the Cahokia event, and I'm very excited about that.
You mentioned that you're a dad. When your children grow up and they, you know, fully embrace that song, what do you hope that they're taking away from it?
Oh, got me talking about my girls. I love this question. For them to see themselves through it, for them to know that their dad truly cared about shining the light on our Indigenous youth. And it's so crazy that that song is for all these kids that it's touching now, but you know, thinking about my daughters, and if they're going through a tough time, I hope they could tune into that, and that's a tough question, sorry.
For your next album, I'm really curious. I mean, there's so many topics that you could really delve into. At a high level, what are some of the topics that you're exploring?
Yeah, the whole concept of the album is about breathe. A lot of us, we carry personal traumas, we carry heavy hearts, and the most powerful thing is just breathing and learning to be within yourself in those breaths. Learning to, I do a lot of mindful meditation, a lot of praying, and just breathing and knowing how to breathe is so powerful. And so that whole album, it's you're breathing in and you're breathing out. Conceptually, there's a lot of definite topics on there. I got a song called "Wave Your Flag," and it comes from the idea of land back and the land back movement, and the flag that we can now put on in our front yards that represents us, as the American flag represents, Americans, but the land back flag is our flag, and for us to be proud of that. And so there's a song that I have Lila June featured on, and there's songs that really kind of help people understand that spirits are with us. Our ancestors are with us. Spirits are with me. I have a song about our spirits with us, and as we travel and as we navigate these our difficult lives, that we're not alone. And so, there's just a lot of very, very strong topics. And then lastly, there's one of my favorite songs that I finished. It's called "The Storm," and "The Storm" is about emotion. Being a man and being raised by women, I was always taught to have that motion. And the storm is not so much about the storm of weather. It's just letting yourself cry. And yeah, it's one of my favorite songs that I'm excited to put out.
I always love to hear from other Indigenous people what land back means to them. What does it mean to you?
Oh, it's such a powerful movement, but land back to me means hope. There's so much hope in the land back movement. It's revitalizing, and there's this ideation that we as people don't own the land, that land owns us. And so, you know, putting the land back in Indigenous hands, in the right hands, is actually giving back to Mother Earth and to the rightful owner of this land, and I believe it's Mother Earth. And so there's just so many different reasons that it can mean, but it just reminds me of hope and giving the land back to Mother Earth.
Well, Mike Jordan, I've loved visiting with you today. Thank you so much.
You go ahead.
And that's a slice of our Indigenous world. For all the latest, visit ictnews.org. From all of us in the newsroom, stay safe, my relatives.
This program is made possible by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, a private corporation funded by the American people.